Our 10th anniversary. I should have known better than to expect something romantic. But hope has a way of clinging to a woman like perfume on skin. Faint, stubborn, and always the last thing to leave. I remember starting the day with a kind of fragile optimism. I pressed his favorite slate gray shirt, the one he said made him feel put together. I cooked lamb, his favorite, slow roasted in rosemary and garlic, paired with a full-bodied Bordeaux I'd been saving. And for me? I wore the dress he once called Dangerous, and I dabbed on the perfume he'd named Danger in a Bottle. A dark, spicy scent. Something that once made him pull me close by the waist and murmur things that made my knees soft. The table was set, candles flickering, music low. He was 3 hours late. By the time I heard his key in the door, the food had gone cold. I didn't even get up. I just sat there, staring at the half-empty wine glass, trying to decide what stung more, the silence or the familiarity of it. "Oh, hey babe," he said, dropping his keys on the console like a man walking into a hotel room. "Sorry. Meeting ran over. You know how it is." His voice was smooth, practiced. I smiled, not because I believed him, but because I didn't. He went straight into the shower. I followed him down the hallway, not sure why, until I saw them. 2 tiny diamonds, glinting in the soft lamplight, sitting neatly on the nightstand like they belonged there. My heart stopped. I don't own diamond studs. I stood over them for a long time. The air felt thick. The world dulled. I picked one up with shaking fingers, still warm, like they'd just been taken off. I sat on the edge of the bed and told myself, maybe they're a gift. Maybe he bought them for me and forgot to wrap them. But the lie didn't hold. They were too delicate, too different from anything he would choose. And then, the scent. Gardenia. Not mine, not even close. It was cloying, cheap, and it clung to our sheets like accusation. A strange calm came over me. Not peace. No, something colder. I walked back to the kitchen, opened my laptop, and pulled up our joint bank account. My hands moved faster than my thoughts, like they already knew what I was about to find. There it was. 2 nights at the Lakeview Inn, 2 towns over. A charge at a boutique jewelry store, Le Petit Bijou, the same weekend he claimed he was at a tech conference in Chicago. I stared at the screen, the numbers blurring. Then I took off my wedding ring. It left a pale indentation on my skin, like a bruise from a life I hadn't realized was choking me. When I heard the water shut off, I placed the ring next to the earrings. For a moment, I imagined them talking, to each other. A gathering of lies. He came into the room whistling, hair wet, towel around his waist, phone in hand. "You won't believe the client I had to deal with today. Total nightmare." I didn't answer. He glanced at me, then at the nightstand. The moment his eyes landed on the earrings, his face didn't betray a single thing. "Impressive, really." "Oh," he said casually. "Those? They're probably my sister's. She must have dropped them when she stopped by last week." We both knew he didn't have a sister. I looked him straight in the eyes and smiled. Not the kind that says I love you. The kind that says I see you now. And I did. All of him. The calculated charm. The arrogance. The effortless lying. Something in me crystallized. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It was colder, more precise, like a clean snap. He turned to hang up his towel, still babbling about traffic and clients and other invisible things. I walked past him, brushing against his damp shoulder. In the mirror, I saw myself. My lipstick was still perfect. My mascara hadn't run. I didn't look like a woman breaking. I looked like a woman beginning. I met him at a gallery opening on a rainy Thursday night. The kind of evening that smelled like damp concrete and possibility. I was wearing an oversized linen, shirt speckled with charcoal smudges, the kind that clung to my sleeves no matter how many times I washed it. He wore confidence like cologne, tailored, assured, slightly arrogant. I remember thinking he looked like he belonged in a sharper world than mine. I was right. He was fascinated by my work, at least that's what he said. He stood in front of one of my abstracts for nearly 10 minutes, head tilted, chin resting on his knuckles like he was deciphering a sacred text. "You paint like you dream in storms," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "You're sunlight with teeth." I laughed, flattered. No one had ever described me like that. It happened fast after that. Nights tangled in bedsheets, mornings drinking burnt coffee from mismatched mugs, talking about art and ambition like we were inventing the world. He said he was launching a boutique consulting firm. Said he wanted to build something real. I told him I was applying to MFA programs in the fall. Then came the what ifs. What if we moved in together? What if we pooled our resources, just for now? What if you took a year off and helped me get this firm off the ground? Just until I stabilize, I told myself it was love. That it was compromise, not surrender. We rented a sunlit apartment with exposed brick and a view of the river. My studio took the corner room, the one with the best light. I hung up a vision board, bought new brushes, but within 6 months my easel was shoved against the far wall and the space filled with monitors and printers. "I just need it during work hours," he said. "It's temporary." The brushes stayed clean. My canvases, half finished and forgotten, collected dust. In the attic crawl space, I began answering his emails, ordering toner, scheduling meetings, cooking dinner, attending networking events dressed like someone's careful wife instead of the woman I used to be, the one who painted past midnight and drank wine straight from the bottle. He introduced me to clients as the engine that keeps things running. It sounded like a compliment until I realized engines don't have names. My friends noticed the change before I did. Emma, my roommate from undergrad, pulled me aside one afternoon. We were sitting at a cafe, 2 coffees between us, steam curling into the autumn air. "You don't laugh the same anymore," she said. "He's strategic, Danny, not just ambitious. Watch yourself." I got defensive, told her she didn't understand, that he needed support, not suspicion, that she was jealous because I had something real. We stopped speaking after that. I didn't realize how quiet my world had become until there was no one left to ask me how I was doing. I told myself, I was growing up, that relationships meant trade-offs, that the passion of youth couldn't last forever, but quietly, I disappeared. His concern came wrapped in velvet, soft but suffocating. "Maybe don't wear that dress to the gala. It's a bit loud. You've seemed tired lately. Have you thought about not pushing so hard on the art thing? Why don't we wait to revisit the MFA? The business is finally stable, and I need you right now." I called it love. It wasn't. It was curation, containment, and I let it happen. Became the woman who hosted brunches with crustless quiche and wine pairings, who kept receipts filed in color-coded folders, who wore beige. I curated his life like a gallery wall, tidy, elegant, flattering to him. The only art I touched were the safe, neutral pieces he approved to hang in our foyer. But sometimes, late at night, when he was asleep and the house went still, I'd sit at the kitchen table and sketch. Just lines, shapes, a cracked open heart, a faceless woman drifting underwater, and that old longing would return, a pulse just beneath the surface. The whisper of the woman I used to be, the one who once screamed in color. I didn't know it then, but something in me had begun to stir. A tiny rebellion, soft as breath, a crack of light where my voice used to live. I didn't have a plan when I followed him. No trench coat, no sunglasses, No shaky hands gripping a camera from behind a bush. I wasn't a spy. I was a wife with a bruised heart and a silent scream. I had found the hotel name on our shared credit card statement, tucked neatly between a gas charge and dinner at a bistro we'd never visited together, the Lakehurst Inn. He said he hated the lake, said it made him feel boxed in by nostalgia. But nostalgia wasn't the thing calling him back. There. I wore my beige coat, the one he liked. Said it made me look classic. I didn't wear makeup. I don't know why that mattered, but I remember noticing the way my face looked in the car mirror. Bare, pale, ghost-like. The lobby smelled like lemons and expensive wood polish. Classical music played low, like a whisper pretending not to watch. Stood near the grand piano and waited. And then I saw them. He came in from the valet entrance, laughing. Not the short, forced laugh he gave me at dinner parties, but a loose, easy one that bent his whole body. She was beside him, younger. Curled hair that bounced when she tossed her head back. Her red dress clung to her hips like it had been stitched. To tempt. No coat, just confidence. Her hand rested on his chest. Casual, familiar. As if she'd done it 100 times before. As if she owned the space where my fingers used to live. They didn't see me. Or if they did, they didn't care. They walked past, so close I could smell her perfume. Gardenia. Cheap, sweet, and impossible to ignore. The same scent that clung to our sheets. My throat closed. They stepped into the elevator. She said something and he grinned. She kissed his cheek, wet, open, possessive. The doors slid shut. I stood there, blinking. The world tilted, quiet and violent. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in that place. I turned on my heel, walked out the revolving doors, and got in my car. I don't remember driving home. The road unspooled beneath me, a blur of headlights and hollow air. My fingers clenched the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to gravity. The house was dark when I got back. Ours. Mine. Whatever it was now. I walked inside, took off my coat, hung it neatly. And then something inside me cracked. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't poetic. It was rage. Ugly and loud and holy. I screamed. I screamed like my body was burning, like every lie had taken root in my bones and was now tearing its way out. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a wine glass on the sideboard, and hurled it at the fireplace. It shattered into a constellation of jagged light. I ripped every picture off the walls. Us at the Grand Canyon. Us on that ski trip I never wanted to take. The candid photo of me laughing at one of his stupid jokes framed in silver. The wedding album. I found it on the bookshelf, tucked beneath a coffee table art book he'd never read. I carried it to the bathroom. Filled the tub. Page by page I let it drown. My dress, my smile, the vows. The ink bled like wounds. I curled on the floor, my hands shaking, my cheeks raw from tears I hadn't realized were falling. I let myself feel everything. All the loneliness. All the swallowed apologies. All the times I told myself I was lucky. The ring was still on my finger. It felt like a shackle. I didn't take it off. Not yet. Somewhere in the middle of the wreckage, I noticed the perfume bottle on my vanity. Danger in a bottle, he used to call it. I picked it up, held it to my nose. It smelled like a woman. I used to be confident, reckless, awake. I sprayed it once just to remember, and in that moment, I felt it. A heartbeat. Not his. Not ours, mine. Buried beneath all the ruins of my carefully curated life, something pulsed. Rage, yes, but also fire. A spark, a quiet voice, steady and sure, whispering in my chest. This is not the end of you. I didn't leave a note. No dramatic speech, no confrontation, just silence. I packed a single duffel bag, nothing neat, nothing folded. A few sweaters, a pair of boots, my sketchbook that had been tucked behind cleaning supplies in the laundry closet. I logged into our joint account and transferred my half. Not a penny more. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted freedom. Then I got in the car and drove. No map, no destination. I kept driving until the bars on my phone signal vanished, until the road turned narrow and trees grew thick on either side like silent sentinels. The cabin was small, weathered, one bedroom, a wood-burning stove, and windows that didn't face anything except pine and sky. No mirrors. That felt important. I didn't want to see my reflection. Not yet. I didn't want to be reminded of the woman who had smiled through so many betrayals. At first, I slept too much. Or not at all. Ate cereal straight from the box when I ate anything at all. The silence felt like a scream. But then, slowly, quietly, it changed. I started walking, down the winding trail behind the cabin, through the tall grass that whispered like ghosts, along the rocky beach where driftwood sat like bones left behind. I walked until my legs ached and my lungs stung, until the noise in my head softened. One morning, I wandered into the little town nearby. It had a post office, a general store, and a bakery with a chipped teal sign that read, Miriam's Hearth. The scent of cinnamon and yeast pulled me in before I realized I'd made a choice. She stood behind the counter, older, wide-hipped, with gray curls pinned haphazardly and laugh lines that didn't look worn down by disappointment. Miriam. She didn't ask where I came from or why I looked like I hadn't slept in weeks. She just poured me a coffee with too much cream and gave me a piece of warm rye bread that smelled like honey and earth. Her granddaughter, B, was maybe 12, with ink-stained fingers and shy eyes. She peeked at me like I was a puzzle she wasn't sure she should solve. That bakery became my ritual. Every other morning, I walked into town. I never said much. Neither did Miriam. Sometimes we sat together on the bench outside, watching gulls, bicker in the parking lot. Pain doesn't stay sharp forever, she said once without looking at me. Eventually it dulls, makes room for other things. That night, I lit a fire in the cabin stove and opened my sketchbook. The pages were yellowed, curling at the edges. My hands hesitated. My heart didn't. I drew a tree, twisted, bare-limbed, beautiful in its defiance of winter. It wasn't good, but it was mine. My fingers got smudged with charcoal, and I didn't wash them right away. I liked the mess, the proof. I started sketching more. The old stove, the shadows of pine trees at dusk, a bird skull I found near the trail, delicate and hollow. Each stroke was a reclamation. At a thrift store on the edge of town, I found an easel, scratched, unbalanced, held together with hope and duct tape. I bought it for $5. Carried it home like it was a wounded part of myself I'd finally come to rescue. I set it up by the window where the morning light spilled in gold and tender. And I painted. Not for galleries, not for approval. For the first time in years, I painted for myself. The silence no longer screamed. It hummed, like breath, like healing. The first painting bled out of me like a wound that had waited too long to open. It wasn't planned. None of it was. I stood in front of that thrifted easel one afternoon, light pooling across the floor like spilled milk, and just moved. Brush to canvas, color to memory, rage to form. It looked nothing like my old work. No delicate still lifes or gently curving landscapes. This was raw, fierce, layers of blue over crimson, sharp edges slashed with white. It looked like a storm caught. Mid-scream. I didn't title it. I didn't have to. Miriam saw it when she came by to drop off a basket of leftover pastries. She stood in the middle of my small living room, crumbs still on her apron, and stared at the canvas like it had whispered something to her. "You should hang this up," she said. I did, I replied. Right there. No, I mean in the bakery. Someone'll buy it. I laughed then. The first real laugh in a while. Who'd want this mess? She just gave me that look, the kind women like her have mastered. The kind that says, you're still learning who you are, but I already see her, so I let her take it. It sold in 6 days. After that, someone left a note with Miriam. Will the artist be selling more? 2 weeks later, I opened a quiet little online shop. No name, just initials. No bio, just art. They called them storm paintings. And they kept selling. Each canvas became a confession, a reckoning. But as I painted, I also remembered. And not just the good memories. The Paris mornings, the Sunday brunches, the way he used to call me Firefly in that half-laughing way. No. I started remembering the silences, the way he corrected my stories in public, how my credit card had disappeared into his streamlined system, how he once asked if I could wear something less loud to his client dinner, how I'd stopped ordering wine at restaurants because he said it made me too talkative. I began to journal at night, not the kind with gratitude lists or affirmations. I wrote facts, incidents, timelines. I pulled old files from a backup drive he probably thought I'd forgotten. Bank statements, insurance documents, scanned receipts from my old art sales, sales I never saw the money from because he said it was being reinvested. One folder, innocent on the surface, held something that made my breath stick in my throat, an account under a different name. His, but with an address I didn't recognize. I dug deeper. Pulled records, searched until the pieces clicked together like bones in an X-ray. He wasn't just cheating. He was hiding money, rerouting funds from the business into a personal account that I had no legal tie to. A shell, cloaked in some LLC jargon. I had signed things, I remembered, but I hadn't read them, because I trusted him. That trust was now kindling. I wasn't stupid, just trained. Conditioned to hand over the reins because love, I was told, meant letting him drive. Not. Anymore? I found a lawyer, a woman. I met her in town, at the cafe that served coffee in chipped mugs with saucers that didn't match. Her name was Elise. Sharp eyes, calm voice. The kind of woman who listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, it felt like pulling the kui, safety off a weapon. I don't want to burn him down, I said, stirring cream into my cup. You just want the truth, she said. And what's yours? Yes. We met twice more. I brought everything. Files, statements, even screenshots of text messages that now read like red flags stitched into silk. She drafted paperwork. Explained every page. No pressure, no panic, just power. I can handle the legal, she told me. You just stay steady. I left those meetings taller. I started doing yoga again in the mornings. Tight, shaking poses on a cheap mat with holes in the corners. But I held each breath. I felt my own body again, my strength. The ring he gave me had been left in the soap dish by the sink back in the city. I hadn't worn it since the night of the red dress. The perfume bottle, danger in a bottle, sat, unopened on a shelf now, next to a cracked photo frame with a picture I couldn't look at anymore. I didn't throw them away, not yet. Symbols have a way of haunting or helping, depending on how you carry them. At night, sometimes, I rehearsed what I might say to him. Not angry words, not screaming, just truth. You don't get to erase me. I was here. I was real. And you. I always stopped there. I wasn't ready to give him a label. Not yet. But I no longer saw myself through his lens. I had found my own reflection, not in a mirror, but in the canvas, in the charcoal, in the way my spine curved during warrior pose. I wasn't healed, but I was awakening. One heartbeat at a time. It was raining when I drove back into the city. Not the cinematic kind, not the cleansing kind. Just a gray, bone-chilling drizzle that painted everything in the same shade of regret. But it didn't matter. I wasn't there for nostalgia. 2 days before our anniversary. 10 years, a decade of my life. And this time, I came bearing paperwork. Not roses. Elise had already served him earlier that morning, at his office in front. Of his new assistant, no less. The one who was likely too young to know what non-disclosure agreements really meant. I'd imagined it, briefly. The rustle of expensive suits, his fake composed smile cracking. But I didn't come for the drama. I came to retrieve what was mine. The gate creaked as I pushed it open. Funny how even metal can sound tired. The house loomed ahead, still grand, still staged, but somehow smaller. Like the illusion had shrunk now that I could finally see through it. I wore black. A fitted coat that hit mid-thigh. No jewelry except a thin silver chain. No makeup but the crimson lipstick I knew he used to hate. Said it made me look aggressive. Perfect. He opened the door, and for the first time in years, he looked unsure of himself. "Wow," he said. "You look dramatic." 10 years deserves a little theater, I said calmly, brushing past him. The house smelled like her, cheap floral perfume over the ghost of my old rose oil, a clash of worlds, in a single breath. She was there, of course, draped in a designer coat too expensive for her age and too tight for comfort. She stood near the staircase, awkward and still, like a prop no one knew what to do with. I didn't flinch, just walked into what used to be the dining room. The long table, the curated art on the walls, my selections, every piece, but now covered in cold lighting and emptiness. "I'm here for my things," I said. "The personal pieces, the paintings, the heirlooms, the ones I can prove were mine before you." He laughed, sharp and nervous. "You don't have to do this. We can talk." "No," I said, pulling a folder from my bag. "You've done enough talking. This," I tapped the folder, "is me finally answering back." He opened it. Bank statements, shell accounts, timeline breakdowns, photos, my lawyer's summary. I watched his face twitch as the lies rearranged themselves in his mind, trying to form a new defense. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "I thought you might say that," I said, already uncorking the bottle of champagne I brought with me, Dom Perignon. Not because I liked it, but because he did. I poured one glass. Just one. Raised it in the silence. To 10 years of gaslighting, financial theft, and betrayal. Then I sipped. Slowly. "You always said I was too emotional," I said softly. "Turns out I just needed better lawyers." He looked at the mistress then, maybe for backup, maybe for pity. She said nothing. Just stared at me like I was a painting she couldn't quite interpret. He tried a different tactic. His voice softened. The same voice he used when I was too tired to argue, when he needed to steer me toward his will. "We can work something out," he said. "You're angry. I get it. But we shared—" I slid another document across the table, restraining order. He froze. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," I replied. "You'll find the list of prohibited contact methods outlined in Section 3. Read it carefully." He stood then, his face red, angry, confused. "This is insane. You're being petty. You want revenge? Fine. But don't pretend you're innocent either." I finished my champagne, set the glass down on the marble countertop like a final period on the sentence. "I'm not pretending anything," I said. "I'm finally telling the truth. Loud enough that you can't rewrite it." I gathered the folder, tucked it under my arm, and glanced around the room one last time. The ring was gone from the mantel. The photo albums had been replaced. Nothing here belonged to me anymore, and that was okay. I turned to the mistress, met her eyes. "Good luck," I said. Not sarcastically, just sincerely. Women like her didn't need my judgment. They needed time. She didn't reply. Just nodded once like she understood the language I was speaking. Then I left. Walked out with nothing in my hands but everything I needed. Weeks passed. He tried to reach me, once, through a mutual friend, but Elise handled it. The papers were filed, the settlements underway. And me? I signed a lease, a small gallery a block from the ocean. Big windows, chipped wooden floors, and light. So much light. I hung my paintings one by one. Reckoning. Daughter of Fire. The Woman in the Mirror. People came. They stood quietly in front of the canvases, some with hands folded, some whispering. One woman cried. Told me it felt like the inside of her chest. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just survived. I had created something out of it. Not revenge. Not exactly. But something holy. Something mine. Some nights, I still wake up with echoes of the past in my chest. I still keep the perfume bottle in a drawer. Not as a reminder of him, but as a marker of the woman who used to wear it. She died. And I was reborn, not as someone new, but as the woman I had always been. The end.